Hi guys. Sure. So I'm trying to. Do you see what technology does? So my phone is on silent, everything is on silent, and I swore to God that I had everything in order. Then a call comes in and my laptop rings. But anyway, guys, I guess this is the joys of technology and everything great. Good evening again. I haven't seen you guys in a month. Did you guys miss me? I think I missed everyone. I was just dreading doing this earlier on because I'm like, oh, I must speak again. What are they going to say? Are they going to tune in? But to introduce myself again, my name is Gatleho Buntle Mutingwe, for those that don't know me. For those that know me, welcome back. I think I should have had that, on YouTube when you do the subscribe, the what, the what. I think I must do a whole introduction thing for Facebook again every time I come back on. But it's good to have you guys back. It's been a while, a week is not a week, a month is a long time away from you guys. I remember our last session, like everybody was nervous and there was quite a few of us, but in this session, I've got two lovely ladies with me, and I think I'm looking forward to an all ladies panel. It's the first time, well, it's not the first time, but it's the first time professionally I've done an all ladies panel, and I'm looking forward to hear what they have to say, and I know I had an article out around the neo-digital era, which is what we're speaking about today, and everybody's had questions, and I remember Bonnie was like, oh, not another term in digital again, but because we are here now, 2021, COVID happened, there's been so many changes. This is why we then delve into the topics that we delve into, the conversations that we have, the people that we speak to. There's so much data as well and insights and so many reportings on so many things that have changed in the media landscape as a whole since COVID, And in every presentation or anything that we do, we always say that the data before COVID does not matter anymore. It's everything that's happened from when COVID hit us and all the reports that have come out and all the data that has come out and all these innovative things that keep coming up, and all these new findings. So I hope you guys are going to stick it out with me as we dissect the understanding of what is this neo-digital landscape that we speak about. But before I get carried away, let me introduce my guests. I am going to start with Deshni. Her name is Deshni Governor, but everybody calls her Desh. Hello, Desh.
Thanks. Yeah, you're exposing my government name, but it's Desh.
But that's the point. People need to know who you are. They must know you for your government name. Then they can call you nicknames.
Listen, governors are full and strong. I'm on TikTok here. They come through.
Okay. But anyway, let me introduce my journey with Deshni, guys. And I think my nerves have kind of calmed down. But anyway, my journey with Deshni actually started at Social Media Week. It was 2018, ne?
Ooh, yes. Wow. Yes.
So I remember we were actually like in the first group of speakers, and I was not ready, But after, I think Deshni spoke after me, and then we just got along. We just mingled and we spoke, and then we were following each other on social media. But she's always been like the cool kid on the block, She's always been the girl that's up to date with the trends, especially social media, digital trends, not even social media, digital trends, And she's always been the girl that's out and about. Like, I've always thought, oh my God, Deshni's so cool, But she really is a cool kid. Like, she's the coolest kid in Africa, and I'm really happy after 2 years, we actually get to sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah, no, that's dope. That's dope. And I loved your energy. I always say there's something and you just click with someone and you don't have to see them or work with them all the time, but you just know that they're very pertinent for the industry. And the industry needs someone like you. So shout out right back at you.
Thank you, Dash. Anyway, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Her name is Tando Managa, I was saying before she got on, Tando looks so familiar. Did I go to school with her? I just couldn't remember. Please remember to unmute yourself, Tando, because I see that you're muted there. Um,
My bad. Hi, guys.
it's technology. It still happens to us. It still happens to us. It's still COVID.
Even millennials get like trapped.
Yeah. How are you, Tando?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you very much again for having me here. This is really awesome. I like the all girls panel that we've got going on as well.
Yay,
How it's
yay.
yes, yes. So yeah, I don't know. Do you want me to
You can
introduce?
introduce yourself as you know, you were getting into it. So go on, girl. Go on,
Yeah,
introduce
keep
yourself.
going.
Let them know who you are.
Yes, so I'm Tando Managa. I'm currently a marketing research specialist at Whisper Media. So Whisper Media, we do DBI, which is digital brand insertions or integration. Um, we very often get mixed around with the concept of digital in terms of digital marketing. However, what we do is post-production in content. So primetime content, you're the queen, the river, so on and so forth. We'll put your brand in there and we can basically do it almost overnight, I'm afraid to say, but it's quick turnaround type of product. So yeah, I've been doing that and in the industry for about 6 years now. So growing, getting there.
When people say I've been in the industry for about 6 years, I always do the maths and I think, shit, what is 6 years? How old am I? What was I doing 6 years ago? But like it's always such a mind-boggling thing where you're like, hey, it's 6 years long. How old am I? Like it kind of exposes you as well and our age that no, guys, we are old now. Like we really, really are old.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Hi, Sfiso. I see Sfiso saying Dumelang there, and I see that we have guests joining us as we go along. Desh, do you just want to give us a bit of background of what you do, where you come from, just so people know exactly who you are, except for the Deshni that I know?
Yeah, because we fam. No, I mean, it's been quite a long journey. I think I've been in the industry for 10 years, and that's exposing me. But in a tweet, an expanded tweet, I probably started my career. I initially was a DJ, and then I pivoted into working I wanted to know the brands that booked me. So I started at the agency side. Shout out to Cerebra. It was my first job ever back then, social media. Did a few agency stints, and then I fell in love with consulting. So yeah, I kind of did the whole like Accenture, working for brands as well. So like your Heinekens and stuff. And that's kind of where the influencer marketing stuff kind of started growing. And then, and then I actually start my new job on Monday. Talk about timings. So I'm pivoting a bit and I'm going on to brand management. So yeah, I'm going to be a brand manager.
Can I slip something, right? As we were talking about Deshni, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited for her. She's moving into something new because I'm just so excited for you. And I love your growth. Like I really, really love everything that you're doing. It was just last week when we were talking about, well, 3 weeks ago when we were talking about this whole discussion that we're going to have. And then we just spoke about what you're doing. So I'm really, really happy that you're growing. I'm really happy that you're moving, man. You're a mover and shaker. I love that about you. And I love the fact that
right?
young people. Yeah. And I love that it's all the young people. So Tando, now we're in the 6 years. I guess in the next 4 years, you would have done so much. And then all of us will kind of be the movers and shakers, But thank you so much, guys, for agreeing to be part of this panel. And yeah, it's literally just going to be conversation about where we are in our careers. I know neo-digital is like a new term. So maybe just to explain it to people, and people keep wondering, what is neo-digital? So we then packaged everything that's happened within the digital landscape. And we're like, we've got all these platforms, we've got all this data, we've got everything that's going on. How do we then find an innovative way or a niche kind of way in packaging where the digital landscape is going? You know what I mean? So in that, we're saying, do we understand our consumers, right? Do we understand the platforms that we're using? And because there's so many new kids on the block in terms of platforms, how is that going to then speak to us? How is that going to affect brands, So I think the interesting part for me here is the fact that I know, especially with Deshni, she's always exploring all these platforms, and with you, Utando, because you're more of a research person, I just want to understand, like, what do you think, or what do you think is going to be the trend for all these new social media platforms moving on for 2021? Definitely, we can start with you. Oh, Tando.
Okay, but okay.
No, I think let's start with you, Dish. You, I think, are specialist in this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can go on and on for like the actual bigger conversation of what's happening in the world, but I'll put on two hats, right? I'll put on a brand hat since that's the stuff that I'm in now, and then I'll put on just as an inquiring mind. So, from a brand perspective, and I'm just putting the disclaimer out there, these are all my own views. It's real out there. The thing is, and this, Tando, as well, like from a media schedule perspective, right? So a brand will have a media agency. Your strategy or your marketing strategy is already done, right? So and I'm going to make up a fictitious brand. Let's say it's a new chewing gum, right? So you're going to go to your biggest reach platform, which is TV, and then if your marketing director doesn't cut your budget, then you're like, cool, sharp. If not, you go to radio, print, and so forth. It's like a pecking order, right?
Yeah.
And the problem is that influencers came in and people are like, okay, it's a media channel. Where do we fit it in? Is it better or less than Facebook? And now when you're getting stuff like TikTok and then Clubhouse, what's happening is this pool of money that you now have to start sharing it more. And so that is what's kind of confusing brand teams. Not everyone, right? The ones that really feel like they want to stick to the traditional stuff. So from a brand layer, I think that as much as we say it's neo-digital, new stuff's coming out, a lot of the big brands are not going to make those risky behaviors because they've got KPIs to meet. So if TV works, they're going to go for TV. They might incorporate Whisper because it's like a new innovative way, but they're not going to be like, let's take my TV money and figure out TikTok. It doesn't work like that, right? But there are a lot of brands, and I've been chatting to people in the industry that are taking risks, right? And I can't mention some brands, but I consulted for a bit, and it's like they're looking and saying, sure, we don't know what the ROI on TikTok is. Let's try it out. And if it fails, plot that as an A/B test. So I do think that what's happening is that a lot of the smaller platforms are now going direct to brands, and they even sometimes bypassing the media agency, and they're saying to brand managers, listen, let's test it out. If it works, it works. And then we go back to your media agency if not. So I think the commonality that I could say amongst everything is that people are being more brave, but with braveness has to come accountability. Because at some point you have, for every rand or dollar you spend, you need to show where you spent it. That's all I'll say.
Definitely. Yeah. So with that said, Tando, I think then with the way the research then comes in is that how has the usage been of digital platforms, so e-commerce, social media, websites and apps changed since 2020?
So I will say definitely what I've noticed coming up a lot, and this is just information coming from your research houses, your Nielsen's, just constantly publishing. The biggest push right now is the e-commerce. So brands know they need to be there. Brands know that this is where consumers are now engaging and expecting us to meet them halfway. But now the issue with that also comes with how do we then do e-commerce? And that's where a lot of brands find the challenges, and that is for them to overcome. And it's very similar to what Desh has just mentioned. It's then becoming brave enough to get into the space and say, okay, we're going to test the waters and see if the strategy works. We don't know if we're going to meet our KPIs. We don't know if we're going to succeed, but however, we'll tap into the innovation budget and see what that gets us at the end of the day. I think definitely e-commerce is that drive that everyone wants to be there, but they're not necessarily so sure how to play in that space. And influencers, again, back to what you're saying, Desh, they disrupted things a lot because digital was already confusing for a lot of people. And then came influencers. Here are these people who are now negotiating with brands directly. And it's like, okay, we'll try to facilitate this. And we saw companies coming up in all your webfluentials. You have IndaHash, where they try to facilitate the conversation between brand and influencer, yes. Yeah. But more and more so, in order to get that more authentic experience with a brand and influencer partnership, it has to be direct. When you have the middleman, a lot of things are lost in translation. But yeah, that's kind of where I see things going in terms of the digital disruption of e-commerce with your influencer marketing. Yeah, at this time, yeah.
You speak a lot, Tando, about brands not understanding the e-commerce space and so forth, ne? And a lot of reports have obviously shown that, I mean, during COVID, especially brands that are selling products, have kind of had to move into that space, and you find that, I mean, the reports have come out that the average South African has about 8.9 apps on their phones. So it's social media, it's brand, it's commerce, and it's all of that all together. How do you think all of that kind of affects the brands in this trend altogether?
So again, it goes back to that fragmentation. So now we've got more options. And what's beautiful about digital, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't like the way these houses kind of curate our data and use that information. But the beauty of that also comes in the fact that we're now able to curate and target consumers based on nuances, as opposed to being mass blasting what you do with your TV. I can't control who's in the room when you're watching TV. However, I know that this particular program is influential to this type of individual. Whoever else is there, this is just spillover, essentially, of my budget. But with digital, with those small budgets that you're working with there, and I say small in comparison to your TV budgets,
Yes.
you're able to now tap into little niche spaces and pockets within the community and within consumers. So it is definitely a great opportunity for brands to tap into the space. It's always important, though, to have the right people navigating and pushing them through the process, just so that they're not making, again, big mistakes that get them canceled. Don't want to be those type of brands type of thing.
Yeah. So Desh, I know you speak a lot on influencer marketing, you know what I mean? How has the growth of all these platforms kind of influenced that space of influencer marketing? Because for me, I think that's also like a big part of the neo-digital era, you know what I mean? Because influencers are also trying to find their feet in these new platforms that are coming up, with all the data that's coming up, with all the changes that have kind of happened within the landscape, and the fragmentation that Utando speaks about. So what do you think has changed for them, or where do you think they kind of fit into this trend or this landscape? Did I lose her?
Oh no.
Oh no. I think I lost her. Okay.
A second.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, we'll just continue with it, But sure. Okay, sorry. It is just getting back into the moment.
Technology again.
Yeah, But anyway, so like I was asking, I mean, I can then pose this question to you. It's just that I know that Deshni is so big in that space, Tando, that what do you think is the change for the influencers? I mean, you spoke about brands and influential and trying to kind of sync the two together and managing that space. How do you think the change has been for influencers with the new kids and the new kids on the block being these new platforms that have been introduced?
Yeah. When you say that, I actually just remembered how there was a point where now new restrictions were being put on platforms and influencers were going crazy. And I'm talking globally. They were going crazy, but they're like, I can't make my money. Their accounts were being shut down. And all of those things are happening. So it goes back to what you mentioned, that dynamic space that they're operating in. They also, more so as brands are trying to figure it out, influencers also trying to figure it out. Your influence is as great as the platform that you're using. So you may be great on one platform, however, it doesn't translate the same to the next. And I think that is also something that in that space, that realm, as they navigate and try to figure that out, they will start to then bring in brands to then create, even to amplify whatever they're doing. But it's really a trick for them as well, more so than we think that it is for brands, if that makes sense.
Okay, so I'm going to just take this one question, but if other questions come up, I'm going to try save them for later for a Q&A, because it works better that way, you know what I mean? Just to keep the conversation smooth, because we can derail because everybody now wants to ask a question, But I think I'm pronouncing it right. Please correct me if I'm wrong at some point. But back, Mashesha is saying, will AI bots replace influencer marketing?
Ooh, so chatbots and all of these stuff. Hey, I don't think so. At the end of the day, unless, of course, the possibilities are endless when it comes to technology, unless of course this AI bot creates its whole persona around itself. Then I can see that happening. However, the experience and what you're getting from influencer marketing is quite different, in the sense that this is a person, firstly, they're selling themselves. It's their personal brand. They have an authentic experience. They have an authentic look and feel to whatever it is they're giving to consumers. So if an AI bot can replicate that, I can see it happening where they're replacing them completely. However, until you can create those authentic kind of experiences and content that speaks to audiences, I don't see that translating. But that's just me. Anything's possible in this world at this point.
So we were actually going through a presentation, and we put this whole report that we'll be releasing actually next week around Neo Digital. So we're working around all these personas, and we're like, it's actually interesting how the persona has changed, in the reporting, in the documentation, in strategy, and everything all together since COVID. You know what I mean? So like, it's an interesting ride for us, because we're sitting here and we're like, what are we presenting to brands? What type of consumer are we speaking to? Do brands still understand their consumers? You know what I mean? Do you think they're still speaking to their consumers? But also, I think the biggest question that I have here is that, do you think the mindset of the South African consumer has changed since 2020? I mean, 2020 being obviously the beginning of lockdown and COVID and everything else, because there's been a tremendous change in behavior in everything that we do within media.
No, definitely. I don't think we could have gone through 2020 without changing as a society in some way, in some form. But I do think the change is also, it's tiered. It's different for different people. So relative to where you are in South Africa, then the changes will change. I.e. in Sandton, people are working from home. Who would have thought? I remember us, when I was still interning, 6 years ago, wondering, why do we go to the office every day if all we do is online? It's like, I could honestly sit at home and do this instead of having to be here. And guess what? Companies were like, nah, we can't do that, da-da-da. Guess what? Now that is the reality we're in. People aren't going to the office as much as they used to. Now it's kind of routine and schedule. So yes, we have changed in that sense. And I think also going into even the other parts of South Africa, where it's not necessarily as easy for you to work from home, you don't have that type of lifestyle. Their lives have changed significantly, because now there are a lot more people, even at that level, who have lost their jobs. There's income lost. And now your home setting, it's no longer just you, your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister. Now there are other relatives who are staying with you. Now the home has become more congested than it was before, because they are not able to self-sustain as they were before. So definitely South Africans could not have gone through 2020 unchanged, if not looking at everything else, just the alcohol ban alone. That changed us as a society.
Definitely. Yeah. Dude, I used to complain about being at the office at 8:30. And I'm like, if I have a laptop and I have a company phone, why am I at the office at 8 o'clock? I remember it actually used to be such a big deal in the office. And I was always thought as that rebellious kid, because I'm like, I'm getting to the office at 8. I'm going to make coffee. I'm going to walk around the office park. I'm going to go to Tando. By the time I sit at my desk and I'm done with all my chit-chatting, it's 9:30. An hour and a half of not working. Whereas I'm at home, my kids have gone to school. So between 7 and 8, I'm sitting on my laptop, responding to emails, right? Doing what I need to do. By the time I get to the office, at least I know that half of my to-do list is done, But I guess COVID kind of then answered some of our prayers, where they were like, yo, guys, you guys better work from home. You're right in your comfortable spaces, whether you're bathed in the morning, whether you're dressed up or not. And I know it's been such a thing for some people, and these video calls and live sessions, but I mean, saved us in some way or the other, because it saved us time. Some people are more productive than others and some aren't, because it's circumstantial, but I think it's a beautiful thing that we've been able to kind of adapt into this transformation that we've had to go through, So I see Desh is back. I'm going to try add her Oh, Desh, we lost you there, but I'm happy to have you back.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Yeah, I think she's lagging there.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna carry on. Unfortunately, we can't stop. You know what I mean? But yeah, we will try again. You know, but I think another thing, you know, that we also need to be cognizant of is that digital has not only changed for us in media, it's also changed for the education sector, meaning our kids obviously need to do online learning and all of that all together. How have you found, do you think brands have been hopping into those spaces or platforms that are being used for online learning?
You know, it's so funny that you even mentioned this. Mr. Zama is the one who actually linked us up to do this. And I remember we did a report back in the day when we were working together, and we did a report where we had touched on gamification for education. And I remember even then, I always would ask myself, I'm like, why aren't brands hopping onto this? Granted, yes, we're in South Africa. Not everybody has access to data. But the beauty of it is it also becomes a CSR initiative where you can now connect people and facilitate that connectivity as brands. Be the hero brand that comes to rescue and say, hey, you guys aren't connected, but here you can access education tools that are entertaining for children, but also not at a costly rate for yourself. So it's actually interesting that you had asked that. Yeah, I don't think brands have really hopped on as hard as they can. There's really potential, there's room still. And I say this even 5 years after I did that first initial report, I can still say.
Is it South African brands or just global brands?
Sorry?
Is it South African brands only that you think this way of, or is it just global brands?
Global brands, but even at a South African level, I'm not seeing a lot of brands come to the party in terms of facilitating education. Considering with 2020, you've got your child. How have you seen any brand come to the party on your side? Let me turn this around and interview you.
Well, the reason I asked this question is because I haven't seen it. You know what I mean? I mean, a lot of us have been on Teams, so I know school has kind of facilitated Teams, and I know there's been Google Education, and then there's Zoom and all sorts of other logins. You know, all other platforms that and I haven't seen any brand or any brand that speaks to a student particularly, or maybe the parent, you know, as the target. The target audience. So I'm asking because I'm really worried to say, are we actually tapping into these spaces? Do we understand how to actually work around these spaces? You know, do we understand our consumers as well? You know, because at the end of the day, and I'm going to speak simple English so that the viewers also understand, is that as a child, all you need to do is see an advert, right? Go and show mommy, who is Tando, and say, mommy, please, can I have, you know? And I'm going to make reference to something that happened on TV during COVID, actually, where I think one of the banks was running something on one of these Disney Juniors or whatever the Popeye is, you know what I mean? Every day, my daughter came to me and said, mommy, please, can I have a so-and-so account? You know, I just don't want to mention brands because we're speaking about everything. But my daughter then came to me and said, mommy, please, can you open such and such an account for me? You know, no, it's good. I saw it on TV. I swear to God, guys, every single day. And I think that that brand did so well in terms of marketing the right audience, you know, because all we need, guys, is for our kids to come and manipulate us into getting them whatever it is they want, you know. So even with digital platforms, they come home now. Yes, they go to school, but they come home now and they still have apps that they need to use for school. But you don't find the right brands that are on there. You know, even these pop-up things, pop-ups to other games and whatnot, which is great. But what are the brands then doing? Are we utilizing that space for what it is?
No, definitely. There is an opportunity for brands in South Africa to really play a big role in that space with consumers. And I agree with you. I completely agree with you. Where I feel like they aren't necessarily coming to the party the way they need to. Hey Dash, welcome back.
Back.
I really do agree there. They're not coming to the party the way they need to, and it's disappointing. But yeah, there are opportunities for days, and when I say opportunities, also opportunities for brands to be heroes. Really, at the end of the day, our economy is already feeling the knock. We're going to continue to feel the knock for some time to come.
Yes,
So
definitely.
there is really this is an open playing field. Come in, be the brand that people then advocate for. Because guess what? 10 years from there, those consumers that you came to save the day for are the same people who are going to advocate for you without any advertising efforts on your side. Those are the people who are going to be like, oh yeah, I grew up with this brand. This brand was there that year. We didn't go to school and it was crazy. But like, hey, I remember this brand. I think there is really an opportunity, especially with the young people, to really engrave themselves. They call them Generation Alpha, these new consumers that are coming in. There's really an opportunity there. And it's sad. It's sad that they haven't done it.
I mean, you speak about Generation Alpha. So in this report that we're building, it's weird because we've kind of then included them in our report. And it's weird because you're like, now we're sitting at Generation Alpha, guys. You know, we're so used to being the millennials, the Gen Mang, and now there's a whole generation coming together. And it's funny you say this because my son, who is 12, was speaking about generations. And I'm like, guys, am I really having these conversations with my kids? You know, like, are we at that level where they actually understand what's going on? So it's very interesting because of what digital has done for our kids as well, you know, but also, Desh, now that you're back, how do you think the mindset of the South African has changed because of digitization? You know, how does it affect the South African consumer?
Yeah, and before I answer that, I want to acknowledge the 2 comments regarding bots and influencer marketing. I think we are dropped off, and the ROI. So I'll definitely answer that because I've got an answer for that. But I think, and I see him, he's coming with the paragraphs because him and I have had long chats. We've had our sessions, Comrade Mtunzi. But basically, and it's linked to that, right? I don't think that we can play the blame game. I know what you guys are saying is that we can't call out a brand that has done education, right? But, I can throw it back at you. Is it part of their brand positioning? Not everyone has that brand purpose, right? At the end of the day, a beer needs to be a beer. A tea bag needs to be a tea bag. A coffee needs to be a coffee, right? But shout out to the brands that weave it in. And naturally so, you would find banking, and insurance would lend itself because they're not going to straight up market to you like, get the savings account. They're going to embed it and weave it in solving customers' frustrations. But to answer your question around, like, how do we ensure that we distill this thing and we keep it the fire lit, so to speak?
Change the consumer journey. Yeah,
exactly. I think 2 things, right? Number one is that everyone keeps talking about 4IR, but a lot of people may not contextualize what that means. What does it mean to you personally? I think that every single person on this live out there, everybody that's been through this pandemic, right? The onus is on you to drive it forward. If anyone follows me on LinkedIn, they know my tagline is each one teach one, right?
Yes.
I may not be sitting, I may not be sitting and having a one-on-one conversation with, say, on a Friday night with my peers about, say, bots and AR and VR and all of that, right? But at the end of the day, whatever I can do in my small part means that I'm driving the conversation forward. And I'm shouting out now to all my peers that are in the brand side, can you also make sure that that conversation is kept alive? I think we get very comfortable. So when 2020 hit, everyone was like, whoa, okay, so now we have to change our brand plans. If I could tell you what it was like on the corporate side, literally like Q1, Q2, it was pandemonium because everything you knew and you scheduled was now gone, right? So when you take that digital conversation, you have to make sure it's an always on mindset, And then when we look at our brothers and sisters, and I'm very passionate about the rest of Africa, I will even selfishly say that sometimes in South Africa, we have this mindset. This is why, like, right? So a lot of the work that I've done, like Nigeria, Tanzania, I've gone to Ethiopia and I've trained teams there. everyone's doing what they can with the little bit that they have. So it's not about pulling a VR social report and saying, oh, look, penetration for Twitter has gone down 3%. It's about saying, here and now, this is what I do. Here's an example. For me, it was a culture shock when I went to Ethiopia, and I'm like, wait, there's no WhatsApp here. You guys have Telegram. Now everyone's talking about Telegram because of the privacy laws. 4 years ago, this was a thing, right?
No one cared.
Exactly, but we have blinders. We're like, no, this is our world. So my biggest thing, to answer your question, we need to be a bit more open, we need to be a bit more uncomfortable, and we need to start experimenting, even on brands. Might not be on e-commerce, but it doesn't mean you can't sit with your media agencies and your creative agencies and say, hey, my coffee brand, what would it look like if I did e-commerce? Doesn't mean I have to do it.
Sure.
So yeah.
So, okay. So Sfiso actually mentioned something that you've touched on now. So we've been speaking a lot about brands and agencies, right? And Neo Digital for me is across the board. So it's a 360 thing for me, is that a lot of brands in the township are new to this digital, I'll call it digital transformation, because they've had to then just move away from just using their social media, which is something that they're also not great at, but they're adapting into it. So using social media platforms, especially your Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, into then promoting their brands, their small businesses, and so forth and so forth. How do you think this era includes them or affects them? I'm not sure if you get what I'm saying.
I do get what you're saying, and I want to answer it in two parts. I think that sometimes we are very spoiled, and I have to check myself and my privilege a lot of the time. So I'll look at a plan and I'll be like, oh, why didn't we cater for this? I realized, why am I not asking the USSD question? I worked on a particular beer brand where we did a whole activation via USSD. And it's not a typical thing that you bring out and you say, let us drive USSD. So things like that, we need to understand this is the market within those certain areas. And this is how we need to change our comms. Another thing as well, like there was this, and I know you guys have seen this, there's been these talks of Wi-Fi murals, right? And now it's a cool thing. Let's go into the townships. Let's get a famous photographer and an artist and do something really cool. But the thing is, when it first started, it was a novelty. But if we actually we're deliberate, we can really affect change here, because number one, we're really upgrading in specific areas. We're providing access, but then the brand gets the awareness. So it's little things like that where you can take premium digital, but you can also just make it literally grassroots level mean something. So I keep harping on this. Literally look at it and say, where's my bias? It's Facebook, it's Instagram, it's Twitter, whatever. But what about the other communication channels? And there's amazing things that can be done even on WhatsApp marketing with the right legalities in place, So yeah.
I mean, Tando, I'm sure the black way of doing things, or doing things rather. But I know that a lot of people will always talk about the townships and mass market, and the main market and black market. And it's always a thing, with brands and coming into townships and wanting to use the black consumers and how they do things and so forth. Do you think brands have kind of figured out the township market? Or maybe, not to go deep into what you think the township economy is, but how do you think the transformation or the digitization has changed for the township economy from a research element? So please don't get me wrong, from a research element, and just understanding what the people out there are thinking or what they're doing.
Okay, I can say, just looking at my experience, right? So as a media owner side, we often get briefs from different agencies for different clients, and we're given different target markets. And one of the ways we can conduct research into that target market is through our surveys. But again, we then also had experiences where certain target markets are inaccessible. These people aren't necessarily where we are and they're not communicating with us the way that we need to communicate with them. So because of this jointness, I can say that I don't think they have that market understood, because I don't think anyone's going at that level to understand this market. And it's almost it goes back to, you find sometimes, and I've seen this happen, where strategists would be like, I understand that market because I have background in that space. And without that context of I see myself in that person, then they aren't able to communicate to that market. There isn't enough research that's being done at that level, unfortunately, where you can say, okay, this is the profiles that we're creating for the township market. Again, it's also almost an airy-fairy type of space that you're operating in. When you say you want to reach Ekasi, it's always an awkward conversation in the boardroom, because what is that? Is it Gaspodi? Like, is that it? And it's like, no, there's nuances even in that space. You can't, there is no blanket statement to say this is Kasi, the Kasi lifestyle, the township economy, as you mentioned before.
Yes.
And can I add to that as well? Because I think what you said is so pertinent. One of my biggest frustrations, and this is when I sat on the agency side, is when people would try to classify things. You know, it's like, oh, let's just throw a word in here to make it sound like that. You know, to a lot of the comments now, it's about every area is very different. So I have two mini stories. Back in my day, I remember when I was a social media manager, I worked on Reds, right? I funny,
we used to drink Red.
I'm exposing here. But anyway, I had fun on that brand. It's very close to my heart because we literally started it. And it's one of those brands that are very relevant in culture, right? But the thing is, I remember when we used to write content plans, we had to check ourselves because, this lingo that you would have in PE is very different in Soweto, right? But the thing is, typical agencies would be one content plan or one brand would be one content plan rules it all, and that's not it. So my first thing is localization, and then super localization is so important. And then the second thing is with a lot of these global brands, and I mean we can pick any example. When it comes to South Africa, we have to adapt it. We cannot be like everyone that's on here that worked in media knows when I say a cut down. No, you cannot fool us. We can still see the man's hand where it's from, okay?
Yeah.
They reshoot this thing and actually don't dub it over. This is not a telenovela here. Literally show us that this is a South African ad. And then the last thing that I will say as well for me, it's just about saying that, you know what, when you want to localize this and you want to get the Kasi audience or you want to go to the township, then you need to put your money where your mouth is. One of the brands that I'm really proud that I worked on was actually, people trying to call me, one of the brands that I worked on that I loved and to this day is my favorite is Smirnoff. And I mean, we all know 1818, right?
Yes.
What people don't know. Yeah, and what people don't, and shout out to TT because TT worked with me on 1818 on the PR side, right? But the thing is, it's like what people never understood is that globally, just literally type in Smirnoff US, it is night and day to what it is in South Africa. It is so locally retrenched. But what we used to do on the digital side, when I handled the digital, we would go into these immersions, we would sit down and we would understand, the older consumer set, the younger guys. You guys remember that ad for now, whatever's next.
Yeah.
We did an EP. It's because we listened to what people wanted. We didn't just say, oh, here's what is trending and popping. And so my call out to a lot of people is go and immerse yourself. Don't pay lip service.
Sure. I think you've said a mouthful there, and I actually, I'm already thinking about when I was from like media owner side, ne? But this is now billboards and all these campaigns used to come in and all this artwork used to come in. I used to think to myself, who actually sits and approves all these things? Because the language is never the same. The tone is also never the same. You know what I mean? It's especially for main market. And I speak about main market so much because everybody then kind of wants to speak about main market, who's doing what, and everybody thinks that because I'm a Soweto girl, but I don't even know Soweto myself. You know what I mean?
The KZN, it has its own. I'm a KZN girl. Don't come and try and know our stuff, right?
And like the data that comes out from all these research houses is so different to what we think we know in the streets, But I think what maybe a lesson I learned rather from one of our panelists in our last session is that in everything that we do, just read, ask, because we can never figure it all out. You know what I mean? And it's different. Like every market is different. Every consumer is different. Like every brand in J altogether is different.
And I'm telling you, to link it back, and this is my challenge or my ask to everyone that's listening, that's sitting with a brief right now, because the briefs are coming in now, right? Is that
Yes.
why are you not looking at influencers from Ikasi, right? So at the end of the day, micro influencers are burgeoning. We've just wrapped a brief now before I start my job on Monday. I've just wrapped a brief and I'm like, cool, like this is where we need to be speaking. Why do influencers need to look like and feel like Instagram? Don't get me wrong, I love Sarah Langa. We had her on Hague Club, but not everybody needs to look like that. Not everybody needs
Yes.
to look perfect, you know? And this is what I love about micro influencers. We're getting all kinds of influencers from across the board. So I think it's changing, you know, but just not fast enough.
So it's weird that you say that, because somebody actually asked me and they were like, Kat, why is it that you're not doing a lot of influencer work? You know what I mean? You're so in tune with the brands that you're working with, you know the landscape, you know the people, your network is big and everything else. And I was like, it's so weird that you speak about this, because influencer marketing, now my numbers on my Instagram are not as high as your Sarah Langa's, because I don't take pictures like Sarah Langa. You know what I mean? I don't take pictures like Deshni. I'm not on social media as much, but when I do speak about the brands that I need to speak about, or whatever it is that I need to influence, I know that there's a high engagement rate in whatever post that I'm going to put out there. I know that people are going to listen, people are watching what I'm doing, you know. So even the small things that I do. So I'm really interested to see and understand how this micro influencer actually grows Kokasi. You know what I mean? So welcome back, Tando. But anyway, just to kind of keep this thing going, because I see that we're going back into influencer marketing. So the question for me is, does the neo digital era speak a lot to what the influencer is doing now? That's a question I have in my head, you know. So guys, I've noted the questions that are coming up. We will have a Q&A session, because there's one long one from Tunzi, and I think I really want us to go.
I know. Tunzi, I'm going to be WhatsApping you because you're coming with the questions.
But anyway, so for me, it's also there's been an increase in the over-the-top concepts like your Netflix, you know, and Showmax that don't have any ads on them, you know. And what do you think platforms like that mean for brands? I mean, for brands in general, because there's no advertising space, and a lot of people are growing into those platforms. I just forgot what video on demand. I forgot.
Streaming video on demand.
A simple way. But anyway, it happens, you know. So I'm just wondering to say, for platforms like that, you know, what do you think brands are thinking? What do you think brands are thinking? I mean, I'll use the video on demand like TikTok. When TikTok started last year March, or just before lockdown, we didn't have what TikTok is now in South Africa, with all the ad space, with all the call to actions and everything that has just become TikTok, you know. Do you think that your Netflix and your Showmaxes are going to move into that space?
Yeah, well, the thing is, I can throw a question back at you. Why do you feel like they're not doing it, right? So, I mean, maybe it's not relevant to South Africa, but let's just look at it globally, right? We look at a lot of shows and we innocently think, oh, what to watch on a Friday night, and then we binge this documentary. But a lot of the times it's already like, if you look at the home edit, right? And maybe not everyone's watched it on Netflix, right? The home edit are the two girls that go about, they do everyone's houses up, and then now you actually see the product line in At Home, and obviously globally it's in Target. But then there's another spoke to it. Reese Witherspoon actually produced it. So if you look at it, it is like a connected circle where you think it's just a show that you're watching, but there are brands that are seeded in. Some of it, though, which is why I think they do it well, it's not so obvious. So when you just extrapolate it, and not just S-word, right? Look at Spotify. Spotify is no longer just about audio, right? They're now a platform where Obamas are on it. So my biggest thing is that we're not going to be using the word influencers. It's now the creator economy, and creators are now competing for platforms like your Netflixes, like your Spotify's. And so it's just that advertising has changed now. It's more edutainment.
Yes. Okay.
Actually, yeah, to add on to what Desh is saying, for example, we've actually done it in SA with Kings of Joburg. We had two brands embedded in the content, and that was kind of a deal done with agency. So that is happening. You can't avoid advertising, unfortunately. The Netflixes of the world are not going to survive because the business models can't survive without advertising revenue. They're spending so much money globally that they need to make that money back one way or another. And it is happening. Also, just to add on to what you're saying, Desh, that's going to be, again, a situation where we see brands going straight to creators, as you mentioned, creators, and saying, hey, let us create together and see what we can do. There's actually a term for this where it's called branded entertainment. That's basically where we're entering. We're entering the space where we're going to see a lot of brands creating shows for us. I saw actually recently, while watching some Ratchet TV, Wendy Williams, there is a game show now that's come up in the US, and it's literally a partnership between Pepsi and Fox, and they're giving away money to people because COVID, and it is what it is. But that's branded entertainment. That's Pepsi saying, hey, we're going to rescue, again, brand coming in as a superhero. We're going to come and be the superhero and champion for these people. So that ultimately, in the long run, we don't need to advertise as hard as our competitors because they already love us and trust us. We have that place in their hearts. So branded entertainment will continue to grow, and influencers will definitely be a very important part of that growth of that space. Definitely.
I like how you're going back to influencers all over again.
Hey,
like
everything
you can't run away from them. You can't.
I see that everything we've spoken about, we've had influencers kind of embedded in this conversation, and we just keep going back to it. I feel like, Desh, maybe we need to organize a whole conversation just to understand the whole landscape of influencer marketing, but just so we can wrap up, guys, for the purpose of time, and then we can go into questions, because questions and answers can take a bit of time as well, right? Is to say, what opportunities do you guys see for brands in the neo-digital era? So maybe just to recap again, is to understand that there's these new kids on the block, there's influencer marketing, and there's so many elements to kind of consider. What opportunities do you think are there, and how do you think we can move forward with the 2021 trends?
I would say it's that whole owned versus earned, right? I think a lot of brands are now trying to create their own properties. And, traditionally, when I worked, say, for example, on Corona, right? Not Corona the beer, we had Corona, right? And the thing is, it's such a massive property that is literally the brand itself. But now I think a lot of brands are going in that space. It doesn't have to be events. They're saying, cool, do I have our own podcast? I think I saw a vodka brand come out with a podcast. Do I have our own online show? Whatever it is, they're moving away from actually just the normal social media, and they're saying, cool, these are our own little branded content pieces. So I think that's going to be a trend just for at least the next year. And then to what every single comment that's on here in the chat, it's just about influencer marketing, but I think definitely more purposeful, and it's now sitting on the media side, so the ROI has to be there. No offense to all the PR guys, but influencers do not sit in the PR space anymore. Bye. It's not there. It's
they are their own beast, influencers at this point.
No, but from a owner side, what do you think the opportunities are for brands?
Again, branded content will continue to thrive in these events and with everything happening around us. Again, just to go back, there's also another instance where we had productions shutting down. That's also another opportunity. What are brands doing to fill up that space on that airtime that's available now? Things are happening. So definitely there's always opportunity for them to come to the party. You need to, again, back to what Desh said, be willing to take the risk, bite the bullet, and just dive in. Be the branded pioneers. And sorry?
I'm saying it's funny you talk about production, but there's an article that came out, or rather it's a video. I don't remember what platform it was, but it was showing how these new kids on the block are using smartphones, to create a whole ad. Geez, why am I forgetting advertising terms? But a whole ad altogether, and they were creating content for the different platforms. So from TV to social media to everything else, and they didn't need big cameras. And the question, I think in the group, it was one of our advertising groups, and the question that came up in the group is, what does this mean for production houses? You know what I mean? With all the big budgets that people had to spend for the production
Getting
house
equipment.
content and getting equipment. What does that mean? So it's very, very interesting that that you say that.
Yeah,
So
it's again a
the
threat.
question that we have here, and I just want us to go through the questions because we've got about 8 minutes left. Is Tunzi is saying, and now Desh has gone disappearing. Her favorite person. What can be done to ensure that this digital revolution doesn't leave 60 or 70% of our population behind? How did East and West Africa get it right? Is it solely reliant on government, or is this something that the private sector really forward alone yet again?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think, questions. There are a few of them here.
Yes, few of them in it.
Yeah.
One.
In one big bundle. How do we make sure that people aren't left behind? And I think I will answer that while trying to answer that last part of asking if this is a government responsibility or private sector.
Yeah.
And honestly, for the majority of the population not to be left behind, we do need government intervention. But at the same time, we need a collaboration between the two. I've always, and this again is my personal opinion, please do not hold it against anybody but myself. But again, where there is competition, businesses and just in general, there is performance. And we need the private sector to put that pressure on government, and we need government to also extend accessibility. Whatever the private sector is bringing to the party, government needs to extend the accessibility to the masses. And again, I'm not too sure where. Oh yes, it was in Kenya. Kenya did something very beautiful that we have yet to do successfully in South Africa. And again, here it's in the interruption of government, and this is how they play a part. Kenya was able to migrate from analog TV onto DTT a long time ago. We have been, guys. Yes. I went to school. I finished school. I'm working. I'm a mother now. We are not there yet, guys. I don't understand. And it's holding us back on so many levels. So I don't know if I'm in you, Msunzi, but we do need a collaboration in order for this to happen, for us not to leave people behind. And it's a majority. We can't deny it. In South Africa, even, it is the majority of the population that don't have access to a lot of things. And digitization acts as a threat, and which is why you get people afraid, again, of what AI could do for their careers. It could hold you back. And it's not necessarily a threat. We can work with technology. It's just a matter of just, yes, Sean, over 10 years, Sean. But yes, this technology does not necessarily have to be a threat, but something we can work together with. But when we have sectors or institutions that hold us back, they play a threat to our survival as society. And our fear of technology is just driven by that. In the last session
we had, and thank you for that. So now that we're in DTT, in the last session that we had one of the guys who was speaking from MultiChoice, and we also kind of reference into the whole thing on moving from analog to digital, you know what I mean? And I remember he even called me the following day, and we had a long conversation around.
Actually, I watched that earlier today. That was you had the conversation with Wendy from Last Choice. Yes.
You know? And he called me the following day, and we had a long conversation around digital and analog. Dude, I was at a community station for a good 4 years, you know what I mean? And in that 4 years, rest in peace to Wandi Nzimande, and he was station manager at that time. And hey, we were told about digitization, going into digital, preparing for it. And
Get ready. It's gonna change everything.
Like, I then started with, this was 2 years ago, 2018, and one of the agencies, our media owners that I was working with, were working with government when they were then talking about DTT and launching it in the Free State. And hey, guys, we've been at this thing. But anyway, conversation for another day. So Sfisa here has a question to say, do influencers charge rates in South African rands or USD for social media purposes? What is the brand expectation from post insights, engagement, and return on investment?
I would advise to charge in rands.
Okay.
I would advise to charge in rands. We're operating in the local market. If you're having a conversation with a global brand that doesn't necessarily have head offices within the South African scope, then okay, we can introduce the USD conversation. But I wouldn't recommend having a conversation in USD. I don't know. I also think it would be a bit confusing. Just what is the expectations in terms of? You see, I think this is the tricky part. I don't know, Katleho, if you can add on to this, but this is the tricky part. I remember there was some time where digital was kind of under fire because that data is not public access. Not everyone who is on digital knows what everyone else on digital is doing. So those benchmarking expectations are also very tricky. I always recommend if somebody comes and asks me like what benchmarks would you use, and I always ask, well, have you run something in the past that you can reference? Have you run something within the category or something that you can use that as a benchmark? Because trying to thumb suck it, I don't know, unless you can add on to that.
Yeah, so the tricky part for me is how influencers take on all jobs that they're given. You know what I mean? So from the different industries and the different sectors altogether, that's what confuses us. You know what I mean? Because it's always the how in which you're doing something, you know? So if you're so used to working with an alcohol brand, you understand and know those consumers. You know what I mean? You know how you're speaking to them. You know how you're engaging with them. You even know, I mean, there's that Weet-Bix trend that came out last week. And you see how the community managers kind of handle that whole thing. You know what I mean? It takes a really high EQ for you to get to that level. So the same with influencers in my understanding. So the same with influencers as well is that when you're taking on a brand, you cannot just take on a brand because it is a job. You know, I'll make an example of how one of the influencers did a campaign. We're talking about this actually after a presentation we did. So this one influencer is taking a campaign on period pains, you know? So she's advocating period pains, she's advocating, hey, this product will help you with your period pains and so forth and so forth. I think it was a week later or days later, right? She then tweets and says, no, I'm dying of period pains and so forth and so forth. The question was, then what were you doing? You know what I mean? Like, what were you doing? What are your followers supposed to say? The people that you're speaking to, what does it mean for the brand? Like, there were so many questions, and she's a prominent influencer. You know what I mean? And it was such a total.
It happens.
So yes, when Spiso is that brands do end up wasting a lot of money. I mean, evidently so. We'll see with the SAB campaign that came out when we had the alcohol closed down and all of that, and how they used that influencer campaign. So that was a mess altogether. But again, it's understanding your consumer and understanding your brand positioning. Yeshni spoke a lot around brand positioning earlier on. So it's getting into that. And I think as brands, because trends are forever changing and things are constantly changing, it just needs us to always be on our toes and consistently kind of then just moving with the times, you know. But there's a lot that kind of comes into influencer marketing. And hence I'm saying I'll probably have another session to speak to people that actually deal specifically with influencer marketing so that we're able to help brands, agencies, and the influencers themselves as how to go about it. I don't see any other questions because I just want to wrap up here. But I see Lesego says any business strategy must be built on the backbone of a digital strategy. You cannot in this day and age have strategy that doesn't at least encompass digital, you know. Hey, that's a conversation for another day altogether. Because
that's a very strong statement, hey?
Yes.
A business strategy must be built on the backbone of a digital strategy. That's a very strong.
But also, right, it can be argued because there's a lot of people that still believe that, yes, things are going into the digital era, but people do not believe that they could win within the digital space. So it's open to conversation, it's open to thoughts, although we know that the media is moving not solely, but is moving heavily into the digital space, and the digitization of things will probably go on for the next years to come. You know, there's always questions around, do you think your brand is going to do you think your job or your brand is going to survive in the next 5 years? So those are questions to kind of always think about as we're building strategy as well. You know, in the last session, Bongi was also speaking a lot on what the role of a strategist is in agency and for brand as well, you know. But yeah, I think we've kind of then just wrapped up everything. I see a lot of people are really interested in the influencer marketing. Guys, you don't understand. Like, I feel like this whole session kind of triggered people, and everything people have been thinking about influencers. So I'm definitely,
it kept bringing itself back up.
Like, I'm definitely gonna have like a short session around, well, not short, but a session around influencer marketing, just to kind of touch on all these points and all these things that were raised. But thank you so much, Tando, for your time. I don't want to waste any more of your time. We are mothers, and I know you said you're keeping your daughter busy. It's time for them to go to bed. Mike is also to bed too. You know, there's school tomorrow, there's work, there's everything else. But thank you so much, Dechni. If you're listening, thank you so much. I know that technology and internet can kind of mess us up, but thank you for the time that you've given us, ladies. I really appreciate it. And for everybody that's listened and tuned in, for all the comments and all the questions, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I think this was the most engaging session, and we've all had to kind of learn a thing or two, you know. But this session will be up on our YouTube page. We will post it on all our social medias in case you missed it or you want to listen to it again. But thank you to everyone, and have a good night from me to you. I love you guys.
Bye.